What if the ocean didn't just remember who escaped it? What if now it's coming back for them one by one? But before I get into that, don't forget to like the video and subscribe only if you enjoy these stories. Comment where you're listening from. And if you've ever lived somewhere that just didn't feel right, I want to hear your story for a future video. All right, get comfortable, turn down the lights, maybe turn on a fan so you can feel the breeze from the sea. I woke up choking on sand, not coughing, choking. My mouth was full of it, packed between my teeth, coating my tongue, stuck so far into my throat that for a few seconds I couldn't breathe. When I finally spit enough out to gasp, I realized I couldn't move my arms, or my legs, or anything except my neck. I was buried up to my chin in the wet sand. At first, I thought it was some kind of sick prank. I'd been drinking the night before with co-workers at one of those late-night bonfires that always go too far. I must have passed out. They must have thought it was funny. But then I felt the tide. The cold water slid up and touched my ear. Low tide, just starting to come back in. And I was stuck in the perfect spot. The spot where the ocean creeps in first. I tried to scream, but the sand around my ribs was too tight, and all that came out was a pitiful rasp. I wiggled my shoulders. Nothing. Tried to pull up. Nothing. My heart was slamming against the sand so hard I could feel the vibration through the ground itself. When I looked around, that's when I saw them. Footprints. Dozens of them. Some heading toward me, some circling me. Some stopping so close that the toes of the prints nearly touched my cheek. But here's the part that made my blood feel like ice water. There were no footprints leading away, only coming toward me, only circling, and all of them perfectly preserved in the sand, which made no sense. I knew the tide had already washed up this far last night. If people had been here after high tide, the prints should have been distorted, washed out. But they were crisp, sharp, fresh, like someone had walked around me only minutes before I woke up. Or worse, like many someone's. I yelled harder, straining my voice until it cracked. No answer. The beach was empty. No one on the dunes, no surfers in the water, not even gulls. Just me and the footprints. Another wave reached me, rising higher this time. Cold seeped under my jawline. I arched my neck to keep my face above the water as the next wave rolled in. That's when I heard it. A whisper, close, too close. Like someone had leaned down beside me and spoken with their mouth nearly touching my ear. Don't look behind you. I couldn't move my arms, but I could move my eyes. I scanned the sand. Nothing. Not a person. Not a shadow. Just those prints. Deeper now, somehow. Another whisper. Same voice. Same breath on skin I couldn't shield. You weren't supposed to wake up. Yet. I started thrashing against the sand. My shoulder screamed in pain. My heartbeat felt like it was rattling my skull. I tried to scream again, but another wave hit, filling my mouth with salt water. And then, something touched the back of my head. Not the water, not the wind. Fingers, slow, deliberate, brushing the hair behind my ear, trailing down my neck. The touch felt wrong, too long, too heavy, too cold. The voice whispered again, drifting around me like smoke. We don't bury the ones we want to drown. We bury the ones we want to keep. I swear I felt breath on my scalp. Whoever it was, whatever it was, leaned closer. We made room for you. I tried to twist my head to see behind me, but the sand held me like a vice. All I could see was the tide rolling in, higher, faster. A shadow moved across the sand in front of me. Not from a person. It stretched wrong, elongated, then split, then reformed, like several figures overlapping each other. The tide reached my chin now. The next wave would hit my mouth. The next after that would cover my face. I passed out before the water did, and when I woke up, I was lying on the dry sand near the parking lot, wrapped in an emergency blanket, surrounded by paramedics. They said a jogger found me before sunrise, said there were no footprints around me, said I must have hallucinated from panic. But I know what I felt. I know what I heard, and I know the truth even if no one believes it. When I stood up, the paramedic pointed at something stuck to the back of my shirt, a piece of seaweed, long, dark, twisted, but woven into it, tied in a perfect knot, was something else. A single strand of human hair, not mine, and when I touched the knot, I heard sand shift behind me, not like the wind, like someone stepping out of a shallow grave. My mum always warned me not to walk under the pier at night. She said the wood was old, the supports were rotten, the tides unpredictable. But really, that wasn't the reason. She grew up here, same beach, same boardwalk, same stories whispered under blankets at sleepovers. Everyone in town knew the real rule. You don't go under the pier after dark, not if you want to hear only your own voice. But I was 16, stubborn, and honestly didn't think anything that creepy could happen in a place I'd known since I could walk. So one night after a fight with my parents, I went down there anyway, barefoot, headphones in, hoodie up, trying to look braver than I felt. The tide was low, shadows stretched long, and the pier groaned above me like something alive. I was walking toward the deeper section where the lights don't reach when I heard my name. Not loud, not urgent, just a soft, gentle whisper threading through the pylons. Lila. I pulled out one earbud, thinking someone from school had followed me, but all I heard was water dripping from the beams and the wind brushing sand. Then again, clearer this time. Lila. The kind of voice someone uses when they're standing right behind you. I spun around so fast I slipped in the wet sand. No one was there, just the underside of the pier stretching into darkness, barnacles clinging to the supports, tiny crabs scuttling away from the light. I told myself it was the wind, or maybe I hadn't turned my music all the way off. But then it said it again, this time from beneath me, right under the boards. Lila, come here. My stomach dropped so hard I felt dizzy. I backed away, but my heel caught on a stone, and I fell to my knees. The sand was cold, too cold. Then I realized why. The tide wasn't where it should be. It was lower, much lower, exposing things under the pier that should have been underwater for hours still. Glints of metal, ropes, a half-rotted wooden beam carved with initials I didn't recognize, and footprints, not fresh, not obvious, but there, leading deeper into the dark. That's when I heard the echo, my voice, my exact voice. Please don't go. I froze. I hadn't spoken. I hadn't even breathed loud enough for it to mimic. Another echo followed, but this one was warped, stretched like someone trying to copy the shape of my words without understanding them. Please, don't go. It came from the sand beneath the slats of the pier floor, right under my feet. I scrambled backward, hands slipping on algae. I wanted to run, but the shadows between the pylons seemed to shift, like something was moving just out of view, keeping pace with me. Then something grabbed my ankle. Not hard, not aggressively, just held it, like a cold hand wrapping around and squeezing gently, familiar almost, like someone who knew me. I screamed so loud the gulls scattered from the pilings. I kicked at whatever had me, and the moment my heel connected with something soft, the grip vanished, but the voice didn't. Now it was right beside my ear. Breath I could almost feel, shape I could almost picture. Lila, don't leave me again. Again. That word didn't make sense. I'd never been under here at night before. I would have remembered something like that. I crawled out from beneath the pier, knees and hands burning from the sand, and didn't stop until I was standing in open moonlight. My breathing was ragged. My eyes watered from the salt air. Behind me, the darkness under the pier roiled. Not like waves, not like shadows. Something shifting, something rising. For 1 second, one horrible, impossible second, I saw my own silhouette step out from behind a support beam. Same height, same hair, same hoodie. But its head lagged slightly behind its body, like it didn't understand the timing, like it was still learning how to follow me. I ran home barefoot, crying, shaking so hard my teeth hurt. I didn't go near the pier for weeks, but this morning, I woke up to find wet sand on my bedroom floor, and when I checked the mirror, my reflection didn't move at the same time I did. It blinked a second late, like something under the pier finally figured out how to wear my face. The storm that night wasn't forecast. It rose out of nowhere. No warning, no wind building up to it. Just a sudden wall of rain slamming against the coast so hard it rattled the windows of my rented beach cabin. I couldn't sleep, so I pulled a chair to the window and watched the lightning crack over the water like invisible hands were tearing the sky open. Around 2 a.m, the tide pulled back so far, I saw something I'd only heard mentioned in local rumors. A road beneath the waves, not a path, not carved rock, a paved road, perfectly straight, stretching out from the shore and disappearing into deeper water. I didn't believe it at first. I thought the storm was playing tricks on my eyes. But when the lightning lit it again, I saw the painted divider down the center, faded white lines, asphalt, even what looked like an old metal guardrail leaning into the dark. An entire road, drowned and forgotten. I should have gone back to bed, should have closed the curtains, but instead I grabbed my flashlight and stepped outside into the storm, letting the rain soak through my clothes immediately. The thunder roared somewhere overhead, but the air felt strangely calm near the water. The road was fully exposed now, maybe 30 feet out, maybe more. It was hard to tell in the flickering light. Then I saw the lantern. At first, it was just a dim glow deep beneath the surface, swaying gently, like someone was walking underwater while holding it at their side. I blinked hard, wondering if I was overtired. But with every flash of lightning, the glow got clearer. It was a lantern, old-fashioned, the kind with a metal frame and a glass belly. The flame inside burned a soft, steady orange. Impossible, given it was submerged under at least 5 feet of water. Yet it didn't dim, didn't flicker, didn't even distort from the waves. It was moving, not floating, moving, like someone was holding it while walking the drowned road. Slow steps, one after another. The lantern rising and falling in a rhythm that perfectly matched the gait of a person on foot. The storm roared, but the lantern continued gliding toward shore. I stepped back, the hair on my arm standing straight. Something about the movement wasn't right. The lantern didn't bob the way a person's hand would when walking. It moved too still, too smooth, almost like the arm holding it was stiff, or like it wasn't attached to a body at all. I backed up until my heels hit the dry sand. The lantern stopped, right at the edge, the place where the underwater road met the beach. Then an arm broke the surface, long, thin, water pouring down it. The lantern was clutched in its hand, fingers wrapped so tightly around the metal that the knuckles were bone white, or maybe they were just bone. The skin was pale blue, like it hadn't seen sunlight in years. My breath hitched when the hand lifted the lantern higher, illuminating the road beneath the water. There were cracks in the asphalt, deep ones, long ones, and between each crack, something moved. Not fish, not seaweed. Hands. Dozens of hands pushing upward from beneath the broken road. Some scraping, some clawing, some reaching toward the surface like they knew it was time, like the storm had given them permission. I stumbled backward, fell into the sand, scrambled to my feet again. The lantern holder didn't follow. It simply stood there at the waterline, arm extended, flame swaying, as if offering the light to me, inviting me, calling me back down the road. I ran. I didn't look back until I was inside the cabin, slamming the door, locking it twice. My heart hammered against my ribs like it was trying to claw out. When the sun rose, the road was gone. Covered again. Just ocean. No sign it had ever been there at all. But before I convinced myself it was all a nightmare, I noticed something on my porch, right by the doormat, dripping wet. A single lantern wick, burned black at the tip, still warm. And when I picked it up, water pooled at my feet, even though it hadn't rained since dawn. I didn't hear footsteps, but I swear something shifted beneath the ground, as if something deep below had turned over. Waking, stretching, remembering. And the ocean, impossibly calm now, looked like it was holding its breath, waiting for me to come back to the road, waiting for me to take the lantern. The cottage looked normal when I first arrived. A little old, salt-worn, but cozy. White paint peeling from the siding, porch swing creaking in the breeze, seashells half buried in the walkway. It felt harmless, the kind of place where you'd expect to drink iced tea and watch sunsets. I didn't notice the window until the second night. It was the only one facing the ocean. A tall, narrow pane in the living room that didn't match any of the others. The glass was thicker, wavier, like it had been salvaged from somewhere older. I liked it at first. At night, you could hear the waves through the frame, and it almost felt like the house was breathing with the tide. But it was the reflection that ruined everything. I walked past the window on my way to the kitchen and caught a glimpse of someone standing behind me. I jumped so hard I dropped my glass. When I spun around, no one was there. Just the empty couch, the empty living room. I looked back at the window, and that's when I realized the reflection wasn't showing me at all. The figure in the glass was a woman. Long hair hanging wet around her shoulders, dress clinging to her legs like she had just walked out of the ocean. She stood inches behind where I was in the real room, but in reality, there was nothing. I stepped closer, heart pounding so hard my ribs ached. When I leaned in, the reflection leaned too, but the woman's face wasn't clear, like the glass couldn't decide what she looked like. The features shifted where her eyes should have been, blurring, reforming, dissolving again. I told myself it was just a trick of the glass. Old windows reflect weird. People see things, no big deal. But when I turned away, something warm dripped onto my shoulder. A drop of water. But the ceiling was dry. The roof wasn't leaking. And when I looked at the floor, it was wet too, just in one small circle behind where the reflection woman had been standing. I cleaned it up and tried to forget about it. Hard to do though, when you know a window is showing you someone else's shadow. The next day, I kept the curtains closed. I didn't even look in the direction of that window. I stayed out as long as I could, walked the beach, ate dinner in town, anything to avoid the cottage at night. But eventually, I had to go back. The moment I stepped inside, the house felt colder than before, heavier, like someone had opened every door while I was gone and let the sea air pour in. I avoided the living room for hours, but around midnight I finally cracked. I needed to know if it had been real or just some weird reflection. I crept toward the window, the house creaking under my feet. When I reached the doorway, I heard breathing. Not mine. A soft inhale, a long exhale, another inhale, coming from the window. I forced myself to look. The reflection was back, but not of the room, not of me. It showed a shoreline at low tide, moonlight stretching across the flats, and there, standing ankle deep in the reflected water, was the woman. But this time, her features were clearer, not blurred, not shifting. Her eyes locked onto mine through the glass, empty, sunken, the color of deep water where sunlight can't reach. She raised her hand slowly, palm outward, like she was pressing it against the inside of the window. My breath stuck in my throat, because on my side of the glass, the window stayed clean. But in the reflection, she was leaving a dripping handprint. I stepped back. She stepped forward. I stepped back again. She moved closer, her face pressing to where the glass should have been cold. And then I felt breath on the back of my neck. Warm, slow, close. I didn't have to turn around. I didn't have to look. The reflection showed me everything. Another hand, not the woman's, reached up from behind me and rested itself on my shoulder. Fingers long, too long, skin pale and wrinkled like dried tide pool flesh. My body couldn't move. I watched the scene in the window, every nerve in my spine screaming. The woman in the reflection smiled, not kindly, knowingly, like she'd been waiting for me to finally understand what the window was showing. Not a ghost, not a warning, a doorway. I tore myself away and ran out of the cottage barefoot, keys still on the table. The reflection burned into my skull. I didn't stop until I reached the far end of the dunes. When I came back with the rental company the next morning, the entire cottage was empty. Furniture gone, walls bare, window frame intact, but no glass, just an open hole facing the sea. And in the sand right beneath it, half washed by waves, was a clear, perfect handprint. Too long, too narrow, waiting. My nephew was the one who found it. We were walking along the beach after a storm, the kind that pulls things from the deep you're not supposed to see. The tide had left behind piles of kelp, broken shells, driftwood, the usual debris. But he spotted something sticking out of the sand, half buried like it was trying to hide. It was a shell, huge, too huge. You know those conch shells you see in movies, the kind you can hold to your ear and hear the ocean? It was shaped like that, spiraled, sharp, glossy, but bigger than any shell I'd ever seen. The thing was the size of his head, heavy too. He had to use both hands just to lift it. I told him to put it back. He didn't. Kids get attached to things for reasons adults can't understand. He hugged that shell to his chest like it was a pet, carried it all the way home, put it on the nightstand beside his bed. His mum rolled her eyes, but didn't fight him. He was a quiet kid, and anything that made him happy felt worth keeping. The first night, he ran into the living room after bedtime, eyes wide, shaking. He said the shell talked. We laughed. Of course we did. We thought he meant the ocean sound people always mention, but he insisted. He said it whispered his name. We checked the shell. Nothing. Just empty curves and dried salt. We put him back to bed. The second night, he said he heard the whisper again. This time, it didn't say his name. It said, "Closer." When he told me that, something in my stomach dropped. Kids don't make up things like that with that kind of fear in their voice. Still, we checked the shell again. We held it up to our ears. We waited, heard nothing. He slept with the hallway light on. The third night, he woke up screaming. We ran in and found him curled on the far side of the room, pointing at the shell on the nightstand. He said the whisper wasn't coming from inside it anymore. It was coming from the outside, from somewhere beside the bed, close to his ear, like someone crouched there had leaned in and said it. Closer. That's the word he kept repeating, trembling, crying. We took the shell out of his room and put it on top of the fridge, but that didn't stop it. Around 3 a.m., I woke up to a soft noise coming from the hallway, a kind of clicking whisper, like someone's breath pushed through teeth that weren't shaped quite right. When I stepped out of my room, the hallway was dark except for the nightlight, and the shell that had been on the fridge, was sitting at the end of the hall, right outside my nephew's bedroom door. I didn't hear anything at first. Then I leaned in, and the shell whispered, not in a voice, not in a language, in a rhythm, like something wet crawling through a narrow space. Like the inside of the shell wasn't empty, but full of something alive, shifting, pushing against the walls. I grabbed it and threw it outside into the yard, slammed the door, locked it. That should have been the end of it. The next morning, when we opened the door, the shell was gone. No sign of it, no tracks, no marks in the wet grass. My nephew was quiet at breakfast. Too quiet. He didn't look tired. He looked empty, like something kept him awake, not with fear but with attention. Finally, he looked up at me and said, "It came to my window last night." His mom dropped her coffee. "I didn't open the window," he said quickly, eyes wide. "I didn't. It whispered from outside. It said it couldn't fit yet." Yet. That word still makes my skin crawl. We moved him into our room that night, boarded up his window, turned on every light. But around 2 a.m., I heard that same clicking whisper, not outside, not in the hall, under the bed. I froze. My blood went ice cold. I leaned over the side of the mattress as slowly as I could and lifted the blanket. The shell was there, pressed tight against the floorboards, pulsing, like something inside it was breathing. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. By morning, it was gone again. We don't talk about it, not to him, not to each other. We pretend the shell broke, or that we lost it, or that it was just a toy. But 2 nights ago, I found sand in his bed, wet sand, and last night, when I stepped outside for air, the breeze carried a faint whisper I recognized instantly. Not my name, not his, just one word, drifting lazily from somewhere down the dark beach. Closer. The first time I noticed the chairs was by accident. I was out for a run before sunrise, trying to convince myself that moving my body would fix the restlessness I'd been feeling. The sky was barely blue, the kind of soft, early color that makes everything look still, like the world hasn't fully woken up yet. That's when I saw them. 3 beach chairs, perfectly aligned, facing the ocean, not just set up, arranged, all equidistant, all angled the same, all with their legs pressed neatly into the sand like someone had measured the spacing with a ruler. No towels, no umbrellas, no footprints around them, just chairs. I stopped running, walked over, looked behind them, checked the dunes. Nothing. The chairs didn't have any logos or names on them, just plain white fabric stretched over metal frames, brand new. I assumed some early risers set them up before I got there. Maybe a beach yoga group, maybe fishermen, maybe insomniacs like me. But the next morning, there were 4. Same arrangement, same spacing, same perfect line. Just one more chair added, seamlessly continuing the pattern. Still no footprints. That's what bothered me. The sand was smooth, undisturbed. No drag marks from the legs. No indentations that looked fresh. It was as if the chairs had been placed there from above, lowered gently, or worse, grown out of the sand like bones rising in slow, patient patterns. Each morning, the count increased. 5, 6, 7. Always one more, always perfect, always watching the ocean. I asked around. Locals shrugged. Tourists hadn't noticed. The lifeguard said they didn't put them there and frankly, didn't care as long as it wasn't vandalism. But on the 7th morning, something changed. There was a single footprint behind the very last chair. Just one. Deep, barefoot, pointing toward the ocean. Not away from it, like someone had stood behind that last chair for a very long time, before stepping forward into the waves. That night, I barely slept. I kept imagining someone walking into the water in the dark, never coming back, and a chair appearing for them at sunrise. A seat reserved, a reminder, or a marker. The next morning, there were 8 chairs and 2 footprints. One behind the new chair, one half buried beside it, as if someone had shifted their weight before taking the final step forward. I should have gone home, should have stopped going to the beach entirely. Instead, I kept showing up, every dawn, needing to know, needing to see how many there would be. On the 10th morning, something was waiting for me. A chair that didn't match the others. All the others were white with clean metal frames. But the 10th one, the newest one, was different. It was red, peeling paint, splintered wood, a lifeguard chair, old, weathered, too big to move quietly, too heavy to carry. It looked exactly like the one from the Red Tower, the one that had been closed, sealed, and rotting. The same one the lifeguard in the other story had seen almost collapse under something invisible. My heart dropped into my stomach. The red chair leaned slightly, like someone was sitting in it, even though the seat was empty. The sea breeze blew across it, but the chair didn't budge. I stepped closer. My throat felt tight. My breath felt thin. That's when I noticed something painted on the top slat of the red chair, barely visible under the peeling layers. A name, not mine, not anyone I recognized. But the moment I traced the letters with my eyes, the water shifted, a single wave rising higher than all the others, as if something beneath it had stirred. The chairs didn't face the sunrise. They weren't arranged for people. They were positioned with absolute precision toward one spot in the water, one exact location. Something was out there, something the chairs were waiting for, or watching, or counting down to. I backed away slowly, sand cold under my feet, even though the sun had finally crept over the horizon. As I reached the dunes, a gust of wind blew past me, carrying a faint sound I swear I didn't imagine. A shuffle, a shift, fabric brushing against metal. And when I turned back, I saw it. The 11th chair, already there, brand new, perfectly placed, facing the same spot in the ocean, waiting for someone. And for the first time, I felt like it was waiting for me. I've spent most of my adult life around tide pools. They're predictable, measurable, logical. Little pockets of ocean trapped in stone. Creatures that behave exactly the way textbooks say they should. Nothing magical, nothing supernatural. That's why I noticed her immediately. It was early morning, fog rolling in, tide pulling back, low enough that I could walk out to the outer shelf where the bigger pools form. I was documenting starfish recovery after the warming event, boring data work, when I saw movement in my peripheral vision. A woman stepping carefully across the rocks. Her clothes clung to her like she had just climbed out of the water. A loose dress soaked at the hem, dripping brine. Seaweed hung from her hair in tangled ribbons, glistening like it was alive. At first I thought she was a swimmer who got caught in a rip, but she walked too steadily, too deliberately. Her feet found cracks and footholds like she already knew exactly where to step. I raised my hand to wave. She raised hers too, not in greeting, in imitation, like she was practicing a motion she hadn't done in a long time. Her face was soft and pale, almost grey, and her eyes were the colour of tide pool water when the sun hasn't hit it yet, that cloudy, shifting blue-green you can never quite read. She stopped a few feet from me and tilted her head the way a curious animal does. "You always wanted to work near the water," she said. My stomach tightened. I hadn't told her that. Hadn't told anyone here, actually. It wasn't something I talked about. I used to be terrified of the ocean, the kind of fear that turns your legs shaky. Nobody knew that except my mother. And my mother was dead. I forced a polite laugh. "Have we met?" Her expression tightened, like the words confused her. "You don't remember," she said softly. "You used to talk to the pools. You named the anemones. You told them secrets." I felt cold all over, because that was true. When I was little, 5, maybe 6, I used to visit the tide pools with my mum. I'd talk to them like they were friends, whisper things I didn't even tell her. But no one else had been there. No one else had heard. No one else could know. She took a step closer. "You were the only child who wasn't afraid," she said. "You leaned close. You looked in. You saw us." Us. The word hit me so hard I forgot how to breathe for a moment. She crouched beside a tide pool and trailed her fingers across the water's surface. The ripples didn't behave the way they should. They curled in on themselves, spiraling inward instead of outward, like the water was reaching for her. "You came here once," she whispered, "before you learned to fear the waves, before you forgot the voices." I stepped back. I couldn't help it. Something deep in me, a memory I didn't even know I had, twisted sharply. Because the tide pool she touched, I recognized it. I hadn't seen it since childhood, but it was the one I used to kneel beside, the one I always felt watched me back. "How do you know that?" My voice cracked. She slowly stood. The seaweed in her hair dripped without stopping, like it had its own tide. "You told me," she said simply. I shook my head. "I've never seen you in my life." She smiled, but it wasn't warm. It was sympathetic. "You were very small," she said, "and I wasn't finished being this." A wave crashed far out on the rocks, a sound too loud for the still morning. She stepped closer, close enough for me to smell salt and something metallic, like blood washed in seawater. "You used to lean over the edge," she murmured. "And when you did, we would lean back. We almost touched." My heart pounded painfully hard. She brushed a strand of seaweed behind her ear, and for just a second, her fingers didn't look right. Too long, bending at an angle my brain struggled to accept. "You forgot us when you grew up," she said. "But we didn't forget you." I stumbled backward, slipping on wet stone, catching myself on a barnacle-covered ledge. She reached toward me, not fast, but with a kind of inevitability, like she already knew where I'd fall. "We've been waiting," she said softly. "You were the first child to listen." The tide surged suddenly, violently, flooding over the rocks even though the moon wasn't anywhere near high tide. Water swirled around her ankles, then her knees, then her waist. She didn't move, just stared at me with those tide pool-colored eyes. "Come back when the tide is lowest," she said. "There's something you need to remember." Before I could speak, another wave rose, towering, impossible, crashing straight over her. When it receded, she was gone. Only seaweed remained, tangled in the rocks, some of it still dripping. I scrambled away and didn't look back until I reached the dunes. The tide pools behind me were calm again, perfectly normal. But sometimes, when I'm falling asleep, I swear I hear water trickling just outside my window. Not like the ocean, like fingers trailing through a shallow pool, calling me back. Nobody warned us that the ocean could rise without the moon's permission. Tides have rules. They're steady, predictable, almost comforting. But that night, nothing behaved the way it should have. Not the water, not the air, not the people who survived the first wave of stories. We all felt it before we saw it, a heaviness, like the coastline itself was holding its breath. I was in my kitchen when the pressure shifted, the kind that makes your ears pop on an airplane. Glasses rattled. The whole house creaked like it was under the weight of a storm, except the sky outside was clear, starless, but clear. Then my phone buzzed. A message from the lifeguard. Just one sentence. "It's happening again. Get to high ground." I didn't think. I grabbed a jacket and ran for my car, but when I stepped outside, I saw something that made my legs go weak. The water was already at the end of the street, not creeping, not flooding in slowly, rising, like a wall of black glass stretching across the beach, swallowing sand, swallowing dunes, swallowing the stairs to the boardwalk as though they'd never existed. I drove anyway, stupid, panicked, but only made it 2 blocks before the water cut across the road. It didn't churn, didn't splash. It moved with this eerie, silent smoothness, like something underneath was pushing it. People were running from their houses, grabbing kids, pets, anything they could carry. A few stood frozen, staring at the ocean like they recognized it, like they knew the feeling of something coming back for them. Then I saw them, the survivors, the man who woke buried in the sand, the girl from under the pier, the one with the underwater lantern, the mother from the cottage with the window, the nephew with the shell, the person who saw the line of chairs at sunrise, the tide pool biologist, all of them moving toward the same place, the bluff above the beach, drawn there like gravity had shifted, like the earth itself was pointing to where we needed to gather. The air felt thick, electric, humming with a frequency that didn't belong to the world I knew. When I reached the bluff, the others were already standing there, staring down at the coastline. The ocean had consumed the entire beach now, stretching all the way to the first row of houses. Water spilled into yards and porches like the tide had decided human borders meant nothing. But that wasn't the worst part. Shapes moved beneath the surface. Not fish, not debris. Figures. Dozens of them. Some walked along the seafloor. Some floated just below the surface. Some curled and stretched like they were learning how their bodies worked. Their outlines kept shifting. Swollen limbs shrinking, twisted joints straightening, torsos lengthening or compressing, as if trying to remember what human anatomy was supposed to look like. "They're fixing themselves," the biologist whispered. "Preparing," said the lifeguard. A wave rose, not like a crest, like something pushing up from the bottom. And on that wave, illuminated by the faint glow of street lights struggling to survive the darkness. I saw her, the girl in the green swimsuit, standing, perfectly still, perfectly shaped this time. Not blurred, not wet, just watching us. Behind her, silhouettes climbed out of the water, one dragging a lantern, another carrying a shell the size of a skull, others stepping carefully like newborns learning to walk. They were coming ashore, all of them, drawn to the same place, drawn to us. The girl from the pier grabbed my hand. Her voice shook violently when she whispered, "They're not here for everybody. They're here for the ones who escaped." A cold realization slid through me, as slow and heavy as the rising tide. Everyone on that bluff had survived something the ocean didn't want us to, something that wasn't finished. The water surged higher, swallowing another row of houses. A siren wailed in the distance and died suddenly, cut off mid-scream. The lantern glowed brighter. The shell cracked open. The tide pool woman's reflection appeared in every puddle around us, smiling like she'd known this was coming. Something massive moved under the water, deeper than the rest, older than the rest. And then, the water stopped rising, completely, still, waiting, like the entire ocean was holding its breath again. The lifeguard stepped forward. His voice was barely a whisper. "It's not a flood," he said. "It's a gathering." The green swimsuit girl raised her arm, not waving, not warning, summoning. The waterline trembled. Something enormous began to rise. And then, everything went dark. The ocean, the sky, the houses, all swallowed in an instant, not by water, but by shadow. I don't know what happened next. Not exactly. All I remember is waking up on the sand, soaked, alone. But the footprints around me weren't mine, and none of them were leading away.